Hello everyone and welcome to our Gem Pursuit. I'm your host Matthew Weldon and joining me today is my trusty co-host Alyce Ketcher for this final part in our Ireland series to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. You know, we've had all hands on deck and we've been getting ready for an antique show that we're doing in the Metropolitan Pavilion in Manhattan that we haven't had a moment to get the intro for this really interesting episode recorded. So I do it here as I wait in the 51st green in Dublin Airport as we're about to take off to go to JFK to do this antiques show. We've done an episode on the Revolutionary period with Michael Collins. Then we did one on ancient and early medieval Ireland with the Tower Brooch. And now, in a way, we're going back even further into pre-history. Collins was 100 years ago. The Tower Brooch was made over 1,000 years ago. But today's episode, the material in question can date back up to 8,000 years ago, and it is an episode on Irish Bog Oak. And it doesn't get much more Irish than the bog. Let's get into this.
Now, I had no idea what a bog was. In Australia, a bog means a toilet, but actually it's something quite different. Matthew, why don't you explain?
Well, the bog is essentially, if you look at a map of Ireland and identify where the bogs are, it's pretty much the entire Midlands, and then there's a lot of higher areas, mountainous areas that have bogs as well. But it's basically, you know, Ireland as we look today, beautiful countryside, farmland. It wasn't always like that. If the agricultural revolution didn't happen here, Ireland was essentially a giant forest of oak trees, obviously other trees as well, but dense oakland forests. And there's about 10% woodland cover in Ireland today, and only about 1% of that is actually native forests. Very sad, right? But we have to eat, so the farm is important as well. But these trees obviously shed their leaves, different animal matter, grass, organic matter builds up, especially with the rain in lake areas as well and kind of wetland areas. It builds up this layered organic material, which over time turns into peat, which is what Mary was cutting, and as it turns out, is absolutely perfect for the preservation of different materials. It doesn't let oxygen in at it. And then obviously it's a wet area, so the water as well also preserves. Also, it's not just wood that gets preserved in bogs. It's also animals and people.
I remember seeing in the British Museum, there was a body in the bog that was preserved. And here in Ireland, in the Archaeological Museum, there is, I think, 4. And even the contents of their stomach is preserved. So we know what their last meal was. The hair on their face, the skin, the nails. It's quite amazing what these bogs actually do. And it's like layers. So if you think about anywhere that has like a lake, bogs are kind of like a lake that has gradually been filled with peat, all of this kind of dense organic material. And as the water kind of silts away, it turns the earth into like a sponge. And because there's a thin layer of water on the top of it, there's no air or oxygen that can actually get into the underneath layers to break it down, therefore preserving anything that's under there. Now you can imagine as time goes on, this builds up and builds up and builds up. So it hardens and it kind of solidifies whatever is underneath in these layers. And this essentially is what bog oak is. It's wood that has been literally beaten down over hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years, to create this very, very dense material that then can come out and be turned into a numerous amount of things.
I think that's a really important point to understand as well. Bog oak is the term for basically semi-fossilized or semi-petrified wood. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's oak, because there were other trees. Majoritively, it probably would have been oak, but there were lots of different trees. For example, the fir tree, that there was, pine trees, yews. They also would have fell into, these silt-covered, mucky areas. But for the purposes, they're all called bog oak.
So the significance specifically with the oak tree in Ireland, obviously because of the dense forests that were here, it was almost part of the Irish psyche having oak trees around them. Oak trees in particular were almost seen as churches.
They were very important. You can tell this because of the word for oak tree, crown darach, which, I mean, there's other varieties of it depending how far back you go in Irish. But crown darach means oak tree, but you'll find out those words in lots and lots of different place names. Kildara, for example, Kildare, which is a region just outside Dublin. Derry, Balliondira. Ottara, Adair, County Limerick. So
Kildara translates for St. Bridget and her abbey, the Church of the Oak. And we know from the past when places were being colonized, churches would be built in those sacred places so that those who actually did practice Celtic religions or pagan religions would then go to those new churches because they were placed in the areas that were considered sacred. There's lots of places around the world where that's happened. In Peru, a lot of their sacred sites, Catholic churches were built on top of the sacred sites so that people would actually go to the Catholic Church. So we don't have proof, but usually the names kind of like denote what originally was there.
And I guess for a lot of those places as well, and a lot of those important ceremonies, like even the oak tree, what it symbolizes would be representative of that. Like, it's very strong, it lasts a long time, it's very hard, enduring. So it's hard to think of something that's a better symbol for those type of gatherings and ceremonies. So now, Alyce, we've got an idea a little bit about the bog, although you can't really understand it until you experience it. And anyone who visits,
I've never been to the bog.
I have been to the bog, a real dub. I was down in the bog in Bursacane in Tipperary, and we used to have to cut turf, and there was a word for there was a certain unit that if you cut this amount of turf, it was like 1 unit of turf, and you got paid by this amount of turf. I sound like a real dub now, by the way.
Yeah, you're a townie.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have a really good story about the bog, actually. As I said, Mari is my auntie's mother-in-law, and she actually met her husband at the bog. She used to go to the bog on the weekends during the summer to do her family's turf for the winter. So she would be down there at the bog, and it was a place that people hung out, and she saw her husband there, and he was actually training to be a priest and decided that having a family was where he was being called. So him and Mari then got married. But it's a very well-known story within the family, and it's a very Tipperary story if you think about it as well, being down at the bog and people hanging out there. Also because you needed the turf for heat during the wintertime. But it also provides beautiful bog oak, which wasn't used for heating purposes, but used for adornment. And some of the most beautiful Irish jewellery is created out of this bog oak.
Yes, beautiful jewellery and ornaments, although originally it was probably ornaments, and then it morphed into jewellery. But just to say, it's called a hopper. There you go. So you've got this beautiful material, right? Why is it suitable for jewellery, right? It's got a great patina. You can see the grain in it, obviously. It's lightweight, which is good because you can make big pieces out of it, right? So if it was really heavy and you were trying to make a big necklace, obviously it'd be weighed to the ground, right? So lightweight, looks like wood because, it is.
It's a shiny wood though, Matthew. It's not like wearing like a twig around your neck. It's shiny. It's a little bit more dense than wood, obviously, because it's been fossilized. And it's waterproof. So it's not porous like normal wood is, which means that it's perfect to wear on the body because any kind of sweat or perspiration is not going to cause it to seep onto the body. So it's perfect tactile material for jewelry making. However, the color is dark. And during the Celtic revival, which was spurred on by the discovery of the Tara brooch, if you listen to our last episode, you'll learn about how the Celtic revival kind of started in Ireland. But this particular material was used heavily for mourning pieces because although it is very, very dark brown to kind of dark red, it actually looks like it's black.
Yeah, it's very, very dark brown to dark red, but like the same way that Guinness is very, very dark. What color is it, Alyce?
Red.
Red. Guinness is dark red, hard to believe, but it's actually very like that. If you look at Guinness, you think it's like very dark brown or black. Bog Oak is the same. It does have really nice hues if you look closely, but when you initially see it, you'll think it's just very, very dark.
And because of that coloration, it was associated with mourning jewelry. Now, during the Celtic revival, it kind of becomes really popular as a mourning jewelry piece because just after the finding of the Tara brooch in the 1860s, towards the end of the 1860s, Prince Albert dies. So the Queen, Victoria, goes into mourning, and, because she's so watched, it's almost as if the macabre becomes fashionable, specifically
But
mourning jewelry.
It does become fashionable.
Yes. Yeah. So it becomes somewhat of a in vogue thing to wear. However, the Irish, with their fashionable flair, use Bog Oak not just for mourning jewelry, but they also use it for jewels which I would say make it quite symbolic to the Irish people. A lot of shamrocks are used. The harp is used quite often as well. And even Irish hounds are used, which is a really interesting motif to have.
I mean, one of the things we come across all the time, Alyce, is how to identify Bog Oak. And I think what you're pointed out there is one of the best ways to do it. Yes, it is used for mourning jewelry, but it's not exclusively used for mourning jewelry. But, there's jet, vulcanite, onyx, all these dark...
even glass beads. Yeah.
But distinguishing them from
Obsidian.
Bog Oak... Yeah, obsidian. We've rarely come across obsidian in our store, I don't believe.
Well, obsidian is a volcanic glass, so we don't really have any volcanic activity around here, Matthew, that's going to allow us to have any obsidian. Also, as a kind of national symbol, proud to be Irish, wearing a piece of Bog Oak. And it did go into some of the biggest exhibitions that went around the world. One in particular was the 1851 Great Exhibition in London. It was obviously also here in Dublin in the 1853 Great Industrial Exhibition. And all of those particular pieces were national symbols of Ireland that were presented, not mourning pieces. And because of their displays, they did become quite popular.
Yeah, I mean, it was often found with royal kind of insignias and Celtic motifs mixed together, which is really interesting when you think about it, because there was a home rule movement, and you would have thought that they wouldn't have had, royal insignia coupled with this very Irish material and symbols. But, you have to remember that a lot of the home rulers who were lobbying for home rule in Ireland were actually Anglo-Saxon. So, both insignias were important for them. And there's a really beautiful piece in the V&A, I believe. It's a little box made of Bog Oak with green enamel diamonds in the shape of a shamrock, but it's got royal insignia on it as well. And that's an amazing piece. But a key thing to remember with Bog Oak, if you're looking for it, because we found one or two pieces, we go to Parma the odd time and we found one or two pieces. There's a key date, and it was to do with what you were saying when Prince Albert died and the Industrial Revolution, but pre kind of 1852, all Bog Oak jewellery is hand carved. So you'll recognize it. It'll be very detailed. It'll be hand carved. It might be slightly asymmetric, which is exactly what you'd expect. But developments of technology from about 1852 onwards meant that they could also kind of they pressed it in sort of a heated steel press, and then got the general shape and then carved out the details after it. So I just think about our ruby episode that we did at the very start, which is well worth listening to, by the way. Ruby is not just ruby. You have to take into account origin, treatment, size, color. Bog oak is the same. There's also hand carved, then there's pressed and carved, and then there's the timing of it. A lot of it's set with silver, but pieces that are set with gold tend to be of extra importance.
Yeah, it's also one of the kind of gems that is mixed up with other mourning pieces of the time. You know, I've had people come into me and say, like, if it's inset and you can't see the edges of it, some people have thought that it's like textured enamel work. So there is a few tests that you can do to figure out whether or not you've got a piece of bog oak or if you've got a piece of jet. But these are streak tests, and they're usually done on a porcelain plate or a porcelain surface, and they are destructive. So unless you can do it from the back of the piece, you don't want to be doing it. So I would suggest to bring it into a gemologist, but usually the motif will give you your big clue.
No, that's a really good tip. Obviously, as you said, you need to talk to a gemologist if there's any doubt, and don't destroy it. And it's obviously interpreting the streak
The
is
color
as
as
important.
well.
It's not just it's not just doing it; you have to interpret it. So, also, I'd just like to say a lot of really good Irish cabinet makers use bog oak, and I remember growing up, I had a pair of bookends that were bog oak, and I just was thinking about this today.
Where are they?
I don't know. I just remember them in my bedroom.
You guys keep everything, so
Oh yeah, no, they're there somewhere.
they've got to be somewhere.
Yeah, but they were beautiful, and they were like a harp that it was like a L-shaped bookend, and the harp kind of kept the two pieces
Oh,
together.
that's cool.
Yeah, they were huge. I'm trying to think where they are now.
Jimmy, where are they, Jimmy?
Jimmy, oh, I don't know now.
Yeah,
But-
they're probably in his room holding his books up.
yeah, probably. But and it's also important to note to say that the person credited with really bringing in this Celtic revival, are using bog oak jewelry in Ireland for jewelry, not for cabinet makers. Were using it for years and years, but it was a goldsmith and jeweler called Patrick McGurk, and he presented an elaborately carved walking stick made of Irish bog oak to King George IV during the monarch's visit to Dublin. King George IV, he was only around for a very short time, I think 10 years or so. But he did visit Dublin. McGurk had originally given carvings that he did to the Duchess of Richmond, but he did them in coconut shells. And then she suggested, you should do that in bog oak.
Just for those who are looking to see pieces, because really, if you're not on this side of the world, it's very rare to see outside of this kind of area. So if you are visiting Ireland, there are a few places where you can actually go and see a few jewellery pieces that are in bog oak. One is, of course, our shop. So we always usually have it at Courtville. We always usually have some type of bog oak piece that we would be happy to show you. If you are in Dublin for a little bit longer and you have time to visit some museums, the Colin Barracks Museum has a fabulous bog oak bracelet that is done in gold. It has leaf motifs that are in bog oak, and of course the shamrock and harp to the front. A beautiful example of a bog oak piece. And then, of course, one of the best jewellery collections in a museum that I've ever been to is the V&A Museum, and their jewellery hall is outstanding. And it would not be outstanding if it did not have a piece of bog oak, and it does. The bog oak piece that they have there is quite elaborately carved. It has 2 Celtic crosses on it. One to the top, which is the main surmount of the actual brooch. And then it has an articulated drop, which is also a Celtic cross. And finished off with kind of like the Holy Trinity 3 trefoil, very subtle looking shamrock that it's all placed on. So that is available to view as well at the V&A Museum in London, in South Kensington, if you can't make it to Ireland. But we also have one very, very important piece that we found. So, Matthew, the piece that we found.
Well, when we took the reins of Courtville in 2018, on the listing there was a piece of the stock that we were purchasing. There was a piece of Bog Oak jewellery, a necklace, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And we did it. Yeah, there was, I don't know how many pieces were involved in this deal. I knew at the time there was quite a few anyway. So I just didn't really, it was in a part of deals. Sometimes you find one or two extra things, one or two things aren't there, and just that's part of it. You take the good with the bad, right? To a certain extent. But I was always curious where this piece was, right? And we were just moving things around in the shop today, and I had an old safe I had to get rid of, right? Moving a safe is quite an ordeal, I can tell you. When we moved this particular safe,
which had been there for how long, do you reckon?
It had been in there since the shop opened, 1981. And you could kind of see the start, it was all painted behind it, right? And then obviously the safe got put there after the shop opened, soon after. And then, someone tried to paint over, and they had like a roller that went in kind of behind the safe. And then it went a certain distance, and then you could see the next person, like the roller didn't go as far. So you can kind of see, like, as you go, you can see all the different layers of paint. So anyway, when we moved the safe, I found the pen goblin that lived in the shop. We found like 1 million pens behind the safe, right? The safe must have been put in after the original carpet, because there was a piece of turquoise carpet under the safe, and that was years ago that was put in.
Oh
right?
Gosh, don't you love the 80s?
Yes, it was literally bright turquoise. The whole shop was turquoise. But anyway, I found this box. Actually, I didn't find it. Fenia found it, I think. Or Darcy. I can't remember. It was all a blur because the safe was moving and stuff going everywhere. But it was like a little paper box, about the size of if you put maybe 3 boxes of cigarettes together, long ways.
Flimsy and dust-ridden.
It was Fenia. She said, "Matthew, what's this?" And I said, "Oh my God. That was the piece of Bog Oak jewellery." Couldn't believe it. And this particular piece, it was one of the biggest pieces of Bog Oak jewellery.
I have never in my life seen, even the bracelet that is in the museum here is like half the size of this piece. Like, I don't think I've seen a piece. Most of the time, the Bog Oak pieces that we see are like small shamrock brooches. You might get a nice pair of earrings, drop earrings that match. You might get like a pendant that will go on a necklace, or a very small necklace. This is a huge necklace. It's a really big piece, and it's not connected just to then like silver or gold, because a lot of the time that's what happens. They have the Bog Oak piece and then it's connected to something that's other material. This is the whole way around, like all
Revere necklace.
The whole thing is made out of Bog Oak. So detailed, and thank goodness preserved behind the safe for nearly 40 years, over 40 years.
Yeah, and just in case I was wondering, this is not normal. We do, check behind these places, but this was just right at the back. The safe weighs like, nearly a ton, so it was just there. But what a special piece, and we're going to be including that in our magazine, which we'll be sending out later this year. So really great find.
Matthew, you are going to look really, really bad if you lose this one, because it's all about Ireland. And if I know more about Ireland than you, shame, shame, shame.
So that's structuring in a way that Alyce wins either way. But set the rules, so you have to play them.
Shame.
But anyway.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Okay, Matthew gets to choose. He got paper and I did
paper.
rock.
Nothing beats paper. I'll take
Scissors
A.
do.
I'll take A.
All right, Matthew. Set A for Gem Trivial Pursuit, the Ireland edition. You ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, question 1. According to Irish mythology, the children of Lear were transformed into what
Swans.
for 900 years? Correct. Question 2. Legendary Irish dancer Michael Flatley's feet were at one time insured for $57.6 million.
True.
And he formerly held the Guinness World Record for the fastest tap dancing. But how quick was his dancing at his peak? A, 12 times per second.
Yeah.
B, 21 times per second. Or C, 35 times per second. Matthew.
I would say it's 12.
So that's A.
Yeah.
It is actually C, 35 times per second.
Sorry.
What a fast little tap dancer
Sorry,
he
Michael.
is.
That's a lot.
Question 3. What was the first Irish language film ever nominated for an Academy Award?
The first Irish language film.
He will not get this. I wouldn't get this either. Okay, you've got 10 seconds.
Sorry, is the title in Irish?
10, 9, 8.
I can't think of any Irish language film
7.
at the moment now, to be honest with you.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hold on. Wait a second.
No, it's
Dancing at Lunasa.
No,
What?
incorrect. It is The Quiet Girl in 2023 on Colin Kuhn.
On Colleen Kuhn. No, I would have never got that.
So that is 2 out of 3, Matthew.
I think it's 1 out of 3 actually.
Oh, it's 1 out of 3. All I have to do is get 1.
Okay.
Yeah, well, those are hard. If I had have got any of those, I wouldn't have gotten anything.
Well, you should get the first one. I see Ross, or our producer, has made these very fair. They're kind of similar. So, okay. Question 1. According to Irish mythology, Oisin and Niamh fell in love on a travel on a magical horse to a paradise land of everlasting youth and beauty. What was this supernatural realm called?
No idea.
I say this all the time in the shop.
No, you don't.
I do.
You don't.
Yes, I do.
I have no idea.
Shame.
Well, yeah, I'm not Irish. Yeah, I pass.
Have you got an Irish passport?
No.
Not yet. Tír na Nog. Tír means Irish. It means country.
I would never have
Og
thought that.
means youth. So Tír na Nog, land of the youth. Okay, question B. In 2019, an Irish farmer named Ivan Scott set the world record for shearing how many sheep in 8 hours? A, 443, B, 867, or C, 901.
I'm going to go for B.
B is correct.
Yoo-hoo! I got one. That's my New Zealand roots. We like sheep too.
Question 3.
Okay.
Which Irish musician and Academy Award winner, I've never even heard of this person. Oh, no, I have. Winner played Outspan in the 1991 Roddy Doyle film adaptation, The Commitments, about a Dublin soul band. Which Irish musician and Academy Award winner?
In 1991.
Sure, you're barely born, but...
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Glenn Hansard.
Well, now we're both equally Irish because you got 2 wrong and I got 2 wrong. So who's really Irish?
There's a draw.
Yes, Matthew. It's one each.
See, that's it.
So we're both as Irish as each other.
I take that as a compliment. You definitely embody the spirit of Ireland. All right, Ross, have we got a tiebreaker? Say the question, then Alyce, you can say it then.
Okay. So for our tiebreaker question, on the 14th of March, 2013, in St. Bridget's National School in Castleknock, the Guinness World Record of the largest gathering of people dressed up as St. Patrick. Matthew, get your hand away from your phone.
I'm messaging Ross.
We're now going to text Ross what our answers are. So the largest gathering of people dressed as St. Patrick.
And then Ross, you just send the answers to the Gem Pursuit group.
Okay. So both of our answers are in.
Oh, it's too low, Alyce. Sorry, your answer. I just saw your answer. Too low.
Okay. So my answer is 257. Matthew's answer is what, Matthew?
2,543. Oh, no, wait. Sorry, what did I say to Ross? 2,453.
Matthew's 2,453.
Yeah.
Ross, 882. So that means I'm closer.
That's a terrible attendance. That's a terrible attendance.
Woohoo!
I demand a recount. How do you know? How do you know how many people were there? Prove it.
If you knew Matthew, you would know he's definitely more Irish than me. But I'm walking away as the Rose of Tralee today. Sorry about that, Matthew. But thank you for your help in winning.
Well, Alyce, I don't know if there's ever been a Maori Rose, but there should be. Look, we're going to wrap it up there on our Irish series. It's actually been a roller coaster of green, white, and orange, but it has come to an end. Don't worry, because we are coming back very soon with a new series, and this time we've even been on the road to do some of our research. It's going to be super exciting, but I have to say, Alyce, I really enjoyed this.
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you, Ross, and thank you to all of our listeners. I hope you enjoyed.
Don't forget to follow and subscribe if you haven't already done so, just so you can stay up to date with our latest episodes and Gem Pursuit information. If you have a burning question or just want to say hi, our mailbox is always open, and it's experts@courtville.ie. This episode was produced by Ross Hannon of Tape Deck, with project management and research by Veronique Gagan and Efmia Sagudi. Listen, thank you to everyone who listened to us, and I look forward to chatting to you all very, very soon. For me, your host, Matthew Weldon, it's Slán go fóill.